Reborn, she chose the poor healer instead of the prince, until his true identity. Why would she choose a poor healer when a prince stood before her? And what could his true identity possibly change about that choice? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another emotional story of destiny, loyalty, and unexpected love. Thank you for continuing to watch, support, and share these stories with us. Your support means more than you know. Tell us in the comments, if you had a second chance at life, would you choose status and power, or the person your heart trusted? Keep your answer in mind as we return to the moment when one unexpected choice was about to change everything. And now, our story begins. Not him, Emily Carter said, and the royal hall seemed to forget how to breathe. Prince Adrian Blackwood stood less than 6 feet away with one hand extended toward her, his ceremonial silver coat catching the light from 100 candles. Around them, nobles, elders, and ranked wolves waited for Emily to complete the choice everyone considered inevitable. She had made it once before. She remembered placing her hand in Adrian's. She remembered applause rolling through this same hall like thunder. She remembered believing that becoming the prince's chosen woman meant she had finally secured a future no one could take from her. Then another memory flashed behind her eyes, a cold room, a crown that felt heavier than iron, voices speaking beyond a closed door as though she were already gone. Emily's fingers turned cold. This morning, she had awakened in her childhood bedroom at 24 years old, staring at a ceiling she had not seen in years. She had thought it was a dream until her mother entered carrying the ivory dress Emily had worn on choosing day. The same dress. The same date. The same life waiting to repeat itself. Now Adrian smiled at her as if her first refusal had merely been nerves. "Emily," he said gently, "you can take my hand." In her first life, that voice had sounded like certainty. Now it sounded like a door closing. Emily stepped backward. A whisper moved through the hall. Her cousin Vanessa Carter stared at her from the front row, disbelief widening her blue eyes. Adrian's smile faded. "What are you doing?" Emily looked past him. Past the royal advisors. Past the wealthy alpha sons standing beneath banners embroidered with ancient pack crests. At the far edge of the hall stood a man no one else seemed interested in watching. Nathan Reed wore a plain brown coat with rain darkening one shoulder. A worn leather healer's bag rested near his boots. He had come because palace law required a licensed healer to remain present during major ceremonies, not because anyone expected him to participate. In Emily's first life, she had barely noticed him that day. Later, when the palace became colder than she had imagined possible, Nathan had been one of the few people who spoke to her without wanting something in return. She did not know why that memory had followed her into death. She only knew she trusted it more than the prince standing before her. Emily turned away from Adrian. The whispers became voices. Someone gasped when she crossed the polished floor. Nathan noticed her approaching and straightened, confusion passing across his gray-green eyes. Emily stopped before him. Up close, she saw rain along the edge of his dark hair and a small tear in one leather glove. Nothing about him suggested wealth. Nothing promised status. For the first time that morning, Emily felt calm. Nathan glanced toward Adrian, then back at her. "Lady Carter? I have made my choice." His expression changed. "I do not think you understand what you are saying." "I understand exactly what I am refusing." The hall fell silent again. Emily heard Adrian behind her. "Emily, enough." She did not turn. Nathan studied her face as though searching for fear, manipulation, or some private joke. "If you choose me," he said quietly, "you walk away from a prince." Emily remembered another lifetime spent learning what that prince's hand could never give her. She held Nathan's gaze. "Then I will walk." For the first time, something unsettled the healer's remarkable calm. He lowered his voice until only she could hear. "Are you choosing me, Emily, or are you simply running from him?" Nathan's question followed Emily into a silence so complete she could hear the candles crackling above them. Was she choosing him or merely escaping Adrian? In another life, Emily would have hated being questioned in front of the royal court. She had spent years learning to smile whenever humiliation arrived dressed as ceremony. But Nathan was not humiliating her. He was offering her one final chance to be honest. Emily looked over her shoulder. Adrian still stood beneath the silver crest of House Blackwood, his hand lowered now, disbelief replacing confidence. Vanessa had moved closer to him, concern arranged carefully across her face. The sight pulled a memory from somewhere Emily had tried not to touch. She remembered another winter, years after this ceremony should have ended. She had been wearing a jeweled crown while sitting alone beside a fireplace that had burned down to ash. Adrian had been attending another private council meeting without her. Vanessa had been there too. Emily had told herself that princes carried responsibilities their wives could never fully understand. She had repeated that excuse until it became the language of her marriage. Then came other memories, quick and merciless. A banquet where everyone praised her gown but no one asked her opinion. Letters from her family answered by palace secretaries instead of reaching her hands. A physician telling her exhaustion was expected while Nathan, then only a quiet healer passing through the palace, had noticed she had barely eaten in 2 days. He had brought her tea without asking for payment, favor, or gratitude. That small kindness had survived when grander memories faded. Emily did not remember every detail of her final days. Some pieces remained hidden behind a cold gray fog. She remembered rain against tall windows. She remembered hearing Adrian's voice beyond a closed door. She remembered Vanessa saying something she could no longer recover. Then darkness. After that came sunlight through the curtains of her childhood bedroom and her mother's voice telling her to prepare for choosing day. Emily had been given another beginning, but no explanation. She turned back to Nathan. Maybe part of me is running from him, she admitted. Murmurs stirred behind her. But that does not mean I am running blindly. Nathan's gaze sharpened. You do not know me. Not well enough. I live nearly 8 miles from the palace. My house has 3 rooms. I earn what people can afford to pay, which is sometimes nothing. His tone remained calm, almost deliberately practical. I cannot give you servants, court invitations, or a royal title. Emily felt something inside her loosen. Those were exactly the things everyone assumed she should want. Once, she had wanted them too. Good, she said. Nathan blinked. Good? I have heard enough about what I would gain. I want to know what kind of life I would actually live. Before he could answer, Adrian crossed the floor. This has gone far enough. Emily faced him. For you, perhaps. His expression tightened. You are throwing away your future for a man you barely know. Emily looked at Nathan's worn healer's bag, then at Adrian's silver ceremonial coat. Her first life had taught her how little appearances promised. Then it will be my future to throw away. Vanessa whispered her name in warning. Emily ignored her. Nathan remained still for another moment, then slowly offered his hand. Unlike Adrian, he did not assume she would take it. Emily looked at his open palm. Somewhere inside her, the woman she had once been seemed to stand beside the woman she had become. One had chosen a crown because everyone said it meant security. The other finally understood that a second life was worthless if she repeated the first. Emily placed her hand in Nathan's. His fingers closed gently around hers. Across the hall, Adrian's face went still. Nathan leaned slightly closer. There is something you should understand before you leave this palace with me. Emily waited. His eyes held a strange sadness she had never noticed in her first life. Poor is what they call me, he said quietly. It is not the reason I live the way I do. The first thing Nathan did after Emily chose him was refuse to let anyone turn her decision into a spectacle. Adrian demanded an explanation. Vanessa insisted Emily needed time to reconsider. Two royal advisors began whispering about whether the ceremony could even recognize a healer as her chosen partner. Nathan listened without raising his voice, then looked only at Emily. "Do you want to stay?" he asked. Emily understood immediately that he meant the palace, not him. "No." "Then we leave." The simplicity of it startled her. No argument. No claim over her. No triumphant smile because she had chosen him over a prince. Nathan picked up his worn healer's bag and started toward the doors as though walking away from royalty required no more courage than crossing an ordinary street. Emily followed. "You will regret this before sunset," Adrian called behind her. She stopped for half a heartbeat. In her first life, Adrian's disappointment had controlled entire years of her existence. Now she kept walking. Outside, cool October air met her face. Nathan's transportation was not a royal carriage but an aging dark green pickup parked beside the service entrance. Emily stared at it. Nathan opened the passenger door. "This is the glamorous part." A surprised laugh escaped her. It was the first genuine laugh she could remember since waking in this second life. They drove nearly 8 miles beyond the palace grounds, following a narrow road through cedar-covered hills until stone walls and silver rooftops disappeared behind them. Nathan's home stood beside a small clinic near the edge of a working-class settlement. 3 rooms, exactly as promised. White paint weathered by years of rain. A porch with 2 mismatched chairs. Bundles of drying herbs hung beneath the roof. Emily stepped from the truck and heard children calling Nathan's name before he had even closed his door. A little girl hurried from the neighboring yard carrying a jar of peach preserves. "Mama said this is for fixing Grandpa's cough." Nathan accepted the jar as though it were payment fit for a king. "Tell your mother she still owes me nothing." The girl grinned and ran home. Emily watched her disappear. "You really accept food as payment?" "Sometimes." "And when people have nothing?" Nathan lifted his healer's bag. "Then they have nothing." There was no bitterness in his answer. Inside the clinic, Emily found shelves of carefully labeled medicine, handwritten patient records, and a waiting room repaired so many times that no 2 wooden boards matched. Nathan moved through it with quiet familiarity. Yet small things unsettled her. His handwriting was precise enough for a royal archivist. Several medical texts on his shelf were written in old northern dialects Emily had only seen inside palace libraries. On one wall hung a faded map of territories that had changed borders more than a decade earlier. Nathan noticed her studying it. "You ask questions with your eyes. You answer them badly with your mouth." A faint smile touched his face. "You may survive here after all." Before Emily could respond, the clinic door opened. An elderly man entered slowly, leaning on a carved walking stick. His silver hair was tied at the back of his neck, and an old military insignia remained pinned to his coat. Nathan turned toward him. The man's expression changed instantly. His shoulders straightened. His hand tightened around the walking stick, and for one strange second, he seemed ready to bow. Nathan gave the smallest shake of his head. The movement was almost invisible. The old man stopped himself. Emily felt the room become suddenly quiet. "Dr. Reed," the man said carefully. Nathan's face revealed nothing. "Mr. Hayes." Emily looked from one man to the other. The veteran had addressed Nathan as a healer, but his eyes had recognized something else entirely. Mr. Hayes never looked at Nathan the way a patient looked at his healer, and Emily could not stop noticing it. The old veteran lowered himself into the wooden chair beside Nathan's desk while Emily remained near the medicine shelves, pretending to organize bottles that were already perfectly arranged. Nathan examined the man's swollen wrist, asked several quiet questions, and prepared a simple herbal compress. Everything about the exchange appeared ordinary except for Mr. Hayes himself. He sat straighter whenever Nathan spoke. He never interrupted. Once, when Nathan reached across the desk for a clean cloth, the veteran instinctively began to rise before catching himself. Emily saw. Nathan gave him another warning glance. You have been using that hand too much, Nathan said. Rest it for 3 days. Mr. Hayes almost smiled. You always did give orders as if people had no choice but to obey them. Nathan's hands paused. Medical orders. Of course. The veteran looked toward Emily, and something cautious entered his expression. And this must be Lady Carter. Emily stepped closer. Just Emily is fine. Mr. Hayes studied her for a moment before turning back to Nathan. So the rumors are true. Nathan tied the compress securely. Rumors usually become less useful once repeated. Some become more interesting. Nathan handed him a small paper packet. Twice a day with warm water. The conversation was clearly over. Mr. Hayes stood, but before leaving, he placed one hand over his heart in a gesture Emily recognized from old royal ceremonies. He disguised it quickly by adjusting his coat. Nathan did not react. Emily waited until the clinic door closed. Medical orders? She asked. Nathan returned several bottles to the shelf. He served in the Northern Guard. Men like him make everything sound military. He nearly bowed to you. His back bothers him. Emily stared at him. Nathan finally looked over, and the corner of his mouth moved. That explanation was not convincing, was it? Not remotely. I will work on it. Emily should have pushed harder, but another patient arrived, followed by a mother carrying a sleepy boy with a fever. For the next 4 hours, Nathan barely sat down. Emily watched him move from one person to another without checking whether anyone could pay. He remembered names, allergies, family histories, even which elderly patient disliked bitter medicine. When the waiting room became crowded, Emily began helping. She filled cups of water, recorded names, folded clean cloths, and kept children occupied while their parents spoke with Nathan. Nobody treated her like the woman who had rejected a prince that morning. Here, she was simply useful. By sunset, her ivory ceremonial dress had collected dust around the hem. She looked down at it and smiled. In her first life, she had spent hours terrified of staining gowns worth more than some families earned in months. Now she was kneeling beside a cabinet counting medicine bottles, and she felt strangely free. Nathan appeared beside her with 2 mugs of tea. You know you do not have to work. Emily accepted one. I know. Then why are you? She looked toward the empty waiting room. Because nobody here asked what title I had before deciding whether I mattered. Nathan's expression softened. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Emily noticed an open book on his desk. The pages were covered in the ancient Northern script once used by the first royal bloodlines. She had seen the language in palace archives, where scholars needed reference guides to translate even a paragraph. Beside the book lay Nathan's handwritten notes in fluent modern English. Emily picked up one page. You can read this? Nathan went very still. Enough. This passage is older than the Blackwood dynasty. She looked at him. Where did a poor village healer learn royal script? Nathan slowly set down his mug. Before he could answer, a knock sounded at the clinic door. Mr. Hayes stood outside again, but this time he was not alone. 3 elderly veterans waited behind him, and every one of them removed his hat the moment Nathan appeared. The veterans did not enter until Nathan invited them inside. Emily noticed that immediately. Men who had spent decades serving in the Northern Guard stood beneath the clinic doorway with their hats held respectfully against their chests, waiting for permission from a healer who supposedly possessed no rank at all. Mr. Hayes cleared his throat. We heard you might need help tomorrow. Nathan's expression remained unreadable. With what? One veteran glanced toward Emily before answering. The family's near Willow Creek. Their medical delivery is late again. Nathan nodded once. I already arranged supplies. The men exchanged looks. From where? Mr. Hayes asked. 3 clinics south of here had extra stock. They would not release reserves without regional authorization. Nathan lifted his mug. Apparently they reconsidered. Emily watched the veterans carefully. None seemed surprised. That bothered her more than surprise would have. Nathan gave them instructions about meeting at 7 the next morning, and each man listened with the same quiet attention Mr. Hayes had shown earlier. When they finally left, Emily folded her arms. "Are you going to tell me why retired soldiers treat you like their commander?" Nathan closed the clinic door. "They respect healers. They removed their hats before you invited them inside. Polite men. They waited for permission to cross your doorway." Nathan looked at her for a long moment. Observant woman. Emily almost laughed despite herself. "You are impossible. I have been called worse." He turned toward the small kitchen behind the clinic, ending the conversation without truly ending it. Dinner was vegetable soup, fresh bread from a neighbor, and the peach preserves Mr. Hayes had brought earlier. It was simpler than anything served at the palace, yet Emily ate more comfortably than she remembered eating at any royal banquet. Nathan did not ask whether she regretted leaving. He did not question her memories or demand an explanation she was not ready to give. When she offered to wash the dishes, he handed her a towel and washed while she dried. The ordinary rhythm unsettled her in a different way. In her first life, servants had surrounded her constantly, yet loneliness had followed her from room to room. Here, in a kitchen barely large enough for 2 people, silence felt peaceful. Later, Nathan showed her the guest room. The bed was narrow but clean, covered by a handmade blue quilt. "You can stay as long as you want," he said. "If tomorrow you decide this was a mistake, I will drive you anywhere you choose." Emily studied him. "You would let me leave? You chose me freely. That means you remain free." The word struck deeper than he could know. Adrian had once called possession devotion. Nathan offered freedom without asking for gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. Nathan nodded and walked away. Emily waited until his footsteps faded before sitting on the edge of the bed. Through the window, she could see the clinic and the dark line of cedar trees beyond it. She should have been thinking about Adrian, Vanessa, or the scandal spreading through the royal territory. Instead, she thought about ancient script, obedient veterans, and medical supplies released without authorization. Near midnight, unable to sleep, Emily stepped into the hallway for water. A thin line of light showed beneath Nathan's study door. She heard his voice inside, low and controlled. "No. Do not use my name." Silence followed as someone answered through the telephone. Nathan spoke again. "Send the medicine to Willow Creek. Tell Commander Ellis the northern settlements come first." Emily froze. Commander Ellis was not a village official. In her first life, she had heard that name inside the palace. He commanded one of the oldest Royal Guard divisions in the Northern Territories. Nathan continued, quieter now. "And if anyone asks who gave the order, tell them the request came from the clinic." Emily stepped backward before the floor could creak beneath her. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but recognition. The poor healer had just given instructions to a royal commander, and he had sounded like a man accustomed to being obeyed. Emily did not mention Commander Ellis the next morning. She told herself she was waiting for the right moment, but the truth was more complicated. Nathan had given her no reason to fear him. Whatever he was hiding, every secret she had uncovered seemed connected to helping people rather than controlling them. At 7, the veterans arrived with 2 pickup trucks, and Nathan loaded boxes of medicine into the beds while Emily checked the inventory list. Willow Creek lay about 12 miles north, where small homes followed a narrow river beneath wooded hills. By the time they arrived, several families were already waiting outside the community clinic. Nathan became too busy to notice Emily studying him. He moved from patient to patient with steady patience, explaining treatments in plain language and never making anyone feel hurried. Yet when a delivery truck failed to arrive, his entire presence changed. "Mr. Hayes, take the western road and check the bridge," Nathan said. "Mr. Collins, call the clinic at Pine Ridge and confirm their reserve count. Emily, I need the remaining supply list." Nobody questioned him. Emily handed him the paper. You have done this before. Nathan scanned the numbers. Organized medicine? Commanded people. His eyes lifted to hers. For a second, the noise around them seemed distant. Sometimes emergencies require someone to make decisions. And somehow everyone decides that someone is you. Nathan folded the paper. You noticed. I notice many things. That is becoming inconvenient. His faint smile almost distracted her. Almost. Before she could answer, an older woman approached with a boy holding a small wooden wolf. Nathan immediately turned his attention to them, and Emily let the question rest. By afternoon, the delayed supplies finally arrived. Nathan refused payment from the clinic director and asked that any extra medicine remain in Willow Creek. On the drive home, Emily watched cedar trees blur beyond the passenger window. Why did you become a healer? She asked. Nathan kept his eyes on the road. Because illness does not care about titles. That sounds like half an answer. It probably is. Emily smiled despite herself. You have many of those. So do you. The words were gentle, but they found their mark. Nathan glanced at her. You looked at Prince Adrian yesterday like you already knew what choosing him would cost. Emily's smile disappeared. She watched the road ahead. How could she explain a marriage that had happened and somehow had not happened? How could she tell him she remembered years that no longer existed? What if I told you I had a dream? She asked. A very long one. Nathan waited. In that dream, I chose everything people told me should make me happy. Status. Security. A place beside someone powerful. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her coat. And I spent years becoming smaller so I could fit inside that life. Nathan said nothing. Emily was grateful. When I woke up yesterday, I knew I could not make the same choice again. And that led you to me? Partly. What was the other part? Emily looked at him. In that dream, when everyone else saw a title, you saw a person. Nathan's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Emily, there are things about me you do not know. I know. He seemed surprised by her answer. Ancient royal texts. Veterans who nearly bow. Medicine released after one telephone call. Commander Ellis taking instructions from a village healer. Nathan's expression went completely still. Emily expected denial. Instead, he pulled the truck onto a quiet overlook and turned off the engine. For several seconds, only wind moved through the trees outside. You heard that conversation? Yes. Nathan looked toward the distant northern hills. Then you understand that Nathan Reed is not the whole story. Emily's heartbeat quickened. Who are you? He reached beneath his shirt as though touching something hidden there, then stopped. Someone who once had a name people obeyed before they knew the man carrying it. Emily remembered the strange sadness in his eyes at the palace. Why hide it? Nathan turned toward her. Because I needed to learn who would still choose the man after the name disappeared. The question stayed between them for the rest of the drive, but Nathan offered no further explanation, and Emily decided not to force one from him. Whatever name he had abandoned, she wanted him to reveal it because he trusted her, not because she had cornered him into confession. By the time they reached the clinic, however, a polished black sedan was parked beside Nathan's aging pickup. Emily recognized the silver wolf crest on its door before Adrian stepped onto the porch. He had exchanged his ceremonial coat for a charcoal suit, but he still carried himself like the entire settlement belonged to him. Vanessa stood beside the sedan, wrapped in an expensive cream coat and staring at Nathan's modest home as though poverty might stain her shoes. Emily, Adrian said. We need to talk. Nathan stopped several feet away. That decision belongs to her. Adrian barely looked at him. This is a family matter. Emily felt the old instinct rise inside her, the one that once told her to smooth every disagreement before Adrian became displeased. She let it pass. Then speak to me. Adrian's expression tightened. Come back to the palace. Yesterday was embarrassing, but it does not have to become permanent. Vanessa stepped closer. Everyone understands that you were overwhelmed. We can explain it that way. Emily looked from Vanessa to Adrian and remembered another lifetime of explanations written for her before anyone bothered asking what she wanted. I was not overwhelmed. Adrian glanced toward the clinic. You traded a royal future for this. Children were laughing somewhere behind the neighboring houses. A basket of fresh bread sat outside Nathan's door, probably another patient's payment. Emily looked at the weathered porch, then at Nathan. Yes. Adrian seemed almost offended by how easily she said it. You have known him for 2 days. And somehow he has asked what I want more times in those 2 days than you did in all the years I knew you. Silence followed. Vanessa's face changed first. Emily realized she had said too much. In this life, those years had never happened. Adrian stared at her. What years? Emily's pulse stumbled. It was a figure of speech. Nathan said nothing, but she felt his attention sharpen. Adrian stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. I am offering you everything back. Your place at court. Your family's standing. The future we planned. Emily remembered the cold fireplace from her other life. She remembered Nathan bringing tea when no one noticed she had stopped eating. That future belonged to everyone except me. Adrian's voice lowered. And this does? Emily looked at Nathan. He did not reach for her. He did not answer for her. He simply waited. That freedom made her answer certain. I do not know what this future becomes, she said. That is why it is mine. Vanessa shook her head. You are choosing hardship because a village healer was kind to you. Kindness is not a small thing. Adrian finally looked directly at Nathan. You should tell her she is making a mistake. Nathan's expression remained calm. Why would I tell her what to choose? Because you cannot give her what I can. Nathan glanced at Emily before answering. Perhaps she has already decided what she values. Adrian's jaw tightened. He turned back toward the sedan. When reality becomes less romantic, the offer may not remain open. Emily watched him leave without calling his name. Vanessa followed after one final disappointed look. Only when the sedan disappeared down the road did Emily release the breath she had been holding. Nathan leaned against the porch railing. All those years? Emily closed her eyes briefly. You heard that. I hear inconvenient things. She almost smiled. Then his expression softened. You did not choose me because you thought I could give you something better than Adrian. No. Then why? Emily looked at the healer who was clearly more than a healer and finally gave him the simplest truth she possessed. Because once, when I had everything, you were the only person who treated me like I was still myself. Nathan went completely still. Once. Emily realized there was nowhere left to hide. I think I have already lived this life, Nathan. And the first time, I chose him. For several seconds, Nathan said nothing. Emily had prepared herself for disbelief, concern, perhaps even the careful expression people used when deciding whether someone was confused. Instead, he opened the clinic door and said quietly, "Come inside. You look cold." That ordinary kindness nearly broke her composure. They sat at the small kitchen table where they had shared soup the night before. Nathan placed 2 mugs of tea between them but did not touch his. Tell me only what you want to tell me, he said. Emily stared into the steam. I remember marrying Adrian. I remember becoming part of the royal court. I remember years passing. Her voice remained steady even when her hands did not. Then I remember everything becoming quiet. After that, I woke up in my childhood bedroom on the morning of the choosing ceremony. Nathan listened without interruption. Emily described only fragments because fragments were all she had. The crown. The empty rooms. Vanessa beside Adrian more often than Emily understood. Nathan appearing during one miserable winter when she had become exhausted and withdrawn. "You brought me tea," Emily said. Nathan's brow tightened. "Tea? You probably do not remember because it has not happened yet." The strange logic almost made her laugh. "You asked whether I had eaten. Nobody else had noticed that I had not." Nathan looked down at his untouched mug. "And that was enough for you to choose me?" "No." Emily met his eyes. "It was enough for me to remember you." Silence settled gently between them. "I do not know why I came back," she continued. "I do not know whether everything will happen the same way. I only knew I could not choose Adrian again." Nathan leaned back slightly. "You realize I cannot prove whether your memories are real." "I know. But I believe that you believe them." Emily felt an unexpected pressure behind her eyes. It was not complete belief, but it was respect, and somehow that mattered more. "That is enough." Nathan finally lifted his tea. "Then perhaps we both arrived here carrying lives we do not discuss easily." Emily remembered his words from the overlook. "Your old name." His expression became distant. "There was a time when people heard it before they saw me. They decided what I represented before I entered a room." "What happened?" "I learned that loyalty offered to a title can disappear when the title does." He looked toward the dark window. "So I left." Emily waited for more, but he shook his head. "Not tonight." She accepted the boundary. "Not tonight." The next several days passed with an unfamiliar peace. Emily worked in the clinic, learned which medicine belonged on which shelf, and discovered that Nathan burned toast whenever he tried to answer the telephone while cooking breakfast. The mysterious man who commanded veterans could apparently lose an argument with a frying pan. Yet the questions around him continued growing. Men arrived after sunset with sealed envelopes. Nathan read them, burned some in the fireplace, and stored others inside a locked drawer. Once, Emily heard him speaking fluent Northern Court dialect to someone over the telephone. Another evening, Mr. Hayes brought an old medical manuscript and asked Nathan to translate a treatment passage no local scholar could read. Nathan did it without hesitation. Then, one rainy morning, the peaceful routine ended. A truck from the northern settlements pulled into the clinic lot. The driver carried a message reporting that several communities had received contaminated medicine from a private supplier. Nathan read the page once. His face changed. The gentle healer did not disappear, but something older and more commanding moved to the surface. "How many settlements?" he asked. 5 confirmed. Possibly 8. Nathan reached for his coat. "Call Hayes. Tell him to contact every clinic north of Willow Creek. Nobody distributes another bottle until we inspect the shipments." The driver nodded instantly. Emily followed Nathan outside. "What are you going to do?" Nathan looked toward the northern road. "What I should have done a long time ago." Within 20 minutes, 3 vehicles arrived. Then 5. Veterans, clinic directors, and regional officials gathered around Nathan as though answering a summons none of them needed explained. Emily stood beneath the clinic awning and watched something impossible become obvious. Nathan Reed had spent years pretending he possessed no authority. The frightening part was how many powerful people still remembered that he did. By noon, Nathan's small clinic had become the center of an operation that should have belonged to the royal administration. Emily stood beside the front desk with a map spread beneath her hands while telephone calls arrived from settlement after settlement. Nathan never raised his voice. He did not need to. "Quarantine every shipment carrying the North Star medical label," he told a regional director. "Move verified reserves from Pine Ridge to Willow Creek and Cedar Hollow. Keep enough stock at Pine Ridge for 48 hours. The director immediately wrote down the instructions. Another official approached with a folder. "The eastern route is blocked by flooding near the bridge." Nathan studied the map for barely 5 seconds. "Use County Road 9, then cut west at Mill Creek." It adds 11 miles, but the road stays above the river. Mr. Hayes nodded as though the decision had already become policy. Emily watched from across the table. This was not simply confidence. Nathan understood roads, supply reserves, personnel, and regional boundaries with the familiarity of someone who had once been responsible for all of them. When a younger official hesitated and asked whether the palace had authorized the redistribution, the room became strangely quiet. Nathan looked at him. Children in 5 settlements need verified medicine today. If the palace wants paperwork, they can have it after the clinics are supplied. The official swallowed. Yes, Dr. Reed. He left without another question. Emily moved beside Nathan. You realize none of them are treating you like a doctor. Nathan kept marking routes on the map. Today I care more about whether they listen. That is not an answer. No. He finally met her eyes. It is the only one I can give you yet. Emily wanted to be frustrated, but a mother entered asking whether medicine from her son's prescription was safe. Nathan immediately stepped away from the map and knelt beside the frightened boy so they could speak at eye level. The authority vanished from his voice, replaced by the patient warmth Emily had first noticed. He checked the bottle, confirmed the manufacturer, and reassured them both. Watching him, Emily understood something that made his secret even harder to solve. Nathan did not enjoy commanding people. He used authority only when someone needed it. By late afternoon, verified medicine was moving toward every affected settlement. No serious illnesses had been reported, and the questionable supplies were secured for testing. Relief moved through the clinic, but Nathan remained tense. Someone approved those shipments, he told Hayes quietly. Find the purchasing records. Hayes nodded. Under whose authority? Nathan's eyes hardened. Mine. The single word changed the room. Hayes straightened instinctively before leaving. Emily stared at Nathan. He seemed to realize what he had said, but neither of them mentioned it. That evening, after the final delivery was confirmed, Nathan returned to his office. Emily followed several minutes later with coffee. The door stood partly open. Nathan had removed his coat and placed his healer's bag on the desk. As Emily set down the mug, the bag slipped from the edge. She caught it before it fell, but the clasp opened. Bandages, notebooks, and small medicine containers spilled across the desk. I am sorry, she said, gathering them quickly. Then something heavy landed near her hand. A silver signet. Emily froze. The engraved wolf wore a crown surrounded by 7 stars. She knew that symbol. Every child in the Northern Territories knew it. It belonged to House Vale, the royal bloodline that had ruled before Nathaniel Vale disappeared years earlier and the Blackwoods assumed temporary authority. Emily slowly lifted her eyes. Nathan stood in the doorway. All color seemed to leave the quiet moment between them. Nathan, she whispered. Before he could answer, headlights swept across the clinic windows. Several dark vehicles stopped outside. Doors opened. Men in formal royal uniforms crossed the porch. Emily still held the signet when the clinic door opened and a silver-haired commander entered. She recognized him immediately from palace ceremonies. Commander Ellis looked past Emily toward Nathan. Then the highest-ranking officer in the Northern Royal Guard lowered himself to one knee. Your Majesty, he said. We cannot hide you any longer. Emily had imagined Nathan's secret a dozen different ways, but never with a royal commander kneeling on the worn wooden floor of a village clinic. Commander Ellis remained perfectly still, his head lowered, while the officers behind him stood in respectful silence. Nathan did not look surprised. That frightened Emily more than the title itself. Stand up, Ellis, he said quietly. The commander obeyed at once. Emily looked down at the silver signet in her hand, then back at the man she had watched accept peach preserves as payment for medical care. Your Majesty, she whispered. Nathan's eyes met hers. My name is Nathaniel Vale. The word seemed too large for the small room. Emily knew that name from history lessons, palace portraits, and whispered conversations about the vanished heir of House Vale. Nathaniel Vale had disappeared years earlier, leaving the Northern Territories without their rightful alpha king. The Blackwood family had assumed temporary authority while royal councils argued over succession. Prince Adrian had grown up expecting that temporary power to become permanent. And Nathan had been living 8 miles from the palace, treating fevers and repairing his own porch. Emily set the signet carefully on the desk. "You are the Alpha King." Nathan's expression carried no pride. "I was born to that title." "That is not the same answer." Something almost sad crossed his face. "No. It is not." Commander Ellis stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the contaminated medicine changed everything. We traced the purchasing authorization to officials connected to the Provisional Court. Several council members are demanding your return before another regional decision is made without lawful oversight." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Were any patients seriously harmed?" "No. Your response reached the settlements in time." Nathan exhaled slowly. Even now, Emily realized that was the answer he cared about first. Not the throne. Not Adrian. The patients. Ellis continued. "The council meets tomorrow morning. They know you are alive." Nathan looked toward the dark window. "Then hiding is finished." Emily felt strangely unsteady. In her first life, she had chosen Adrian because he was a prince. In this life, she had deliberately chosen the poorest man in the hall, only to discover that his forgotten name stood above Adrian's entire house. The irony should have felt like victory. Instead, it frightened her. "Did you know this would happen?" she asked. Nathan turned toward her. "No." "Did you know you might return?" "Someday. Perhaps." "And when I chose you?" His answer came immediately. "I believed I would remain Nathan Reed." Emily searched his face. "Why did you not tell me?" "Because you had just walked away from a prince." His voice softened. "If I had told you that same afternoon that I possessed a greater title, how could either of us know what you were choosing?" Emily remembered his first question in the royal hall. "Are you choosing me, or are you running from him?" Now she finally understood the weight behind it. Nathan picked up the signet but did not put it on. "I needed one place in my life where my name entered the room after I did." Emily looked toward the clinic shelves, the mismatched furniture, the medicine records written late into the night. None of it had been an act. Poverty might have been the world's interpretation, but service had been Nathan's choice. Commander Ellis cleared his throat. "There is another problem." Nathan turned. "Prince Adrian has already called an emergency session. He claims House Vale abandoned its authority and cannot simply reclaim it." Nathan's expression remained calm. "He is entitled to make his argument. He has also requested Lady Carter appear before the council." Emily stiffened. "Why?" Ellis glanced at her. "Because your choice at the ceremony is now being presented as evidence that you knew Nathaniel's identity beforehand and conspired to challenge House Blackwood." Emily almost laughed at the absurdity, but Nathan did not. His gaze became cold and focused. "She knew nothing." "I believe you," Ellis said. "The council will require more than my belief." Nathan reached for his plain healer's coat. No royal uniform. No ceremonial silver. Just the same weathered coat he had worn when Emily chose him. "Then tomorrow," he said, "they will hear the truth from the man who hid the crown and the woman who chose him without it." The royal hall looked different when Emily entered it beside the man everyone had mistaken for a poor healer. Less than a week earlier, she had crossed the same polished floor while nobles whispered that she had destroyed her future. Now those same people fell silent before Nathan had taken 10 steps. He wore his weathered dark coat, carried no ceremonial staff, and displayed no crown. Only the silver signet of House Vale rested on his right hand. Commander Ellis walked several paces behind them with Mr. Hayes and 2 senior officers. Emily felt hundreds of eyes follow her, but she kept her gaze forward. Adrian stood beside the council table beneath the Blackwood crest. Vanessa sat among the Carter family representatives, her expression pale and guarded. "Nathan Reed," Adrian began. Nathan stopped. "If this council intends to discuss legal succession, Prince Adrian, accuracy would be useful." Adrian's jaw tightened. An elderly councilman slowly rose from his chair. Then another stood. Across the chamber, 3 veteran elders followed. Within seconds, half the council was standing. Nathan did not acknowledge the gesture with satisfaction. He simply waited. The eldest councilman placed one hand over his heart. Nathaniel Vale. The name moved through the chamber like a truth everyone had been afraid to speak. Lawful heir of House Vale and Alpha King of the Northern Territories. Emily heard Vanessa inhale sharply. Adrian remained standing, but the confidence she remembered from both lifetimes had changed into careful restraint. A title abandoned for years cannot be restored because a group of old soldiers recognizes a signet, he said. Agreed, Nathan replied. Adrian appeared surprised. Nathan continued. That is why Commander Ellis brought the sealed succession records, council certifications, and testimony from the surviving members who witnessed my departure. Ellis placed a thick folder on the table. Every document is available for independent review. The council chairman nodded. They will be reviewed. Adrian looked toward Emily. Then we should also review the extraordinary coincidence of Lady Carter rejecting me days before the missing king suddenly reappears. Whispers returned. Emily felt the accusation spreading exactly as Ellis had warned. Vanessa stood. Emily has always cared about security and position. Are we truly expected to believe she accidentally chose the one man whose hidden title outranked the prince? In her first life, Emily would have rushed to defend herself. She would have explained until her dignity depended on whether the room believed her. This time she remained still. I did not know, she said. Adrian gave a humorless smile. Convenient. It is also true. Can you prove it? Before Emily answered, Nathan stepped forward, but he did not stand in front of her. He stood beside her. I can. Adrian looked at him. Nathan removed the Vale signet from his finger and placed it on the council table. When Emily chose me, this was hidden inside my healer's bag. I had introduced myself to her as Nathan Reed. My home, my clinic, my income, and my work were exactly what she saw. I offered her no estate, no royal position, and no promise that my former identity would ever be restored. Vanessa folded her arms. We have only your word. Then ask the people who watched her live after she left the palace. Nathan gestured toward Mr. Hayes. Ask the patients she helped without knowing who I was. Ask the clinic directors who saw her working beside me. Ask Prince Adrian himself whether Emily accepted his offer to return before my identity was revealed. Every gaze turned toward Adrian. Silence answered before he could. Emily remembered the black sedan outside Nathan's clinic. Adrian offering everything back. Her own refusal. The council chairman looked at him. Did you offer Lady Carter restoration of her position? Adrian hesitated. Yes. Did she refuse? Another pause. Yes. The room changed. Not dramatically. No applause followed. But suspicion lost its certainty. Nathan turned toward Emily, and his voice softened enough that the council seemed to disappear around them. You chose me when you believed I had 3 rooms, an old truck, and a healer's bag. Emily almost smiled. The truck is still old. A quiet ripple of laughter moved through the chamber. Even Nathan's expression warmed. Then the council chairman opened the sealed succession file. His face became serious as he read the first page. There is one final matter. Nathan looked toward him. The chairman raised his eyes. If these records are authentic, House Blackwood was never granted permanent sovereignty. Its authority was custodial until Nathaniel Vale returned or was legally declared dead. Adrian went completely still. The chairman closed the folder. Which means tomorrow's question is not whether Nathaniel Vale may reclaim the throne. His gaze traveled across the silent hall. It is whether the throne was ever legally vacant at all. By sunrise, the question of Nathan's crown had become less important to Emily than the question of what he would do with it. The council reconvened after independent archivists reviewed the sealed records through the night. Emily sat near the end of the long table while Nathan remained standing beside an empty chair traditionally reserved for the Alpha King. He had refused the ceremonial coat prepared for him. His weathered healer's coat still carried a faint stain from the clinic, and somehow that made the royal chamber seem overdressed. The council chairman adjusted his glasses. The succession records are authentic. House Blackwood received custodial authority after Nathaniel Vale disappeared. No lawful declaration of death was issued, and no transfer of permanent sovereignty occurred. Silence followed. Adrian sat rigidly across the table. Nathan showed no triumph. Then House Blackwood acted within custodial authority until my return, he said. The chairman nodded. Correct. Emily noticed Adrian look up. Nathan continued. Prince Adrian will retain his family title and all private holdings protected under territorial law. No family will lose property because of a succession dispute they did not create. Several council members exchanged surprised glances. Emily understood what Nathan was doing. He was removing humiliation from the transition before anyone could turn it into revenge. Adrian seemed to understand too. You would allow my family to remain at court, he asked. Nathan met his gaze. If you serve the territory rather than the chair at the head of this table. Adrian's expression tightened, but after a moment, he nodded. The chairman moved to the next matter, the contaminated medicine. Records showed that a private supplier had substituted unverified stock after receiving approval from administrators who had failed to complete required inspections. Nathan ordered an independent review of the purchasing system and temporary oversight by regional clinic directors. He did not accuse Adrian without evidence. He did not protect officials because of rank. Emily watched him separate justice from anger with the same care he used when measuring medicine. Only then did she understand why men like Hayes and Ellis had remained loyal after the crown disappeared. Nathan had not commanded their loyalty by demanding it. He had earned it long before he needed it. When the formal session ended, the council chairman opened a narrow wooden case. Inside rested the silver crown of House Vale. Nathan stared at it without moving. Your Majesty, the chairman said, the council recognizes your lawful authority. Nathan picked up the crown, but instead of placing it on his head, he carried it toward Emily. Every conversation stopped. Emily's heartbeat quickened. Nathan set the crown on the table between them. The last time I wore this, he said quietly, people agreed with me before I finished speaking. They praised decisions they had not considered and promised loyalty they had not tested. Emily looked at the silver reflected in the polished wood. So you became Nathan Reed. I became a healer because illness cannot flatter you. A fever does not care who your father was. A frightened family does not need a king. They need someone who stays. His gaze held hers. Then you walked into my life and chose the man I thought nobody would choose. Emily felt the room disappear around them. I chose Nathan. I know. His answer was almost a whisper. That is why I will not let this crown change the meaning of your choice. He moved the crown slightly toward her, not as a gift, but as a question. If I return to this life, everything becomes complicated. Councils. Ceremonies. Responsibilities. People watching every decision. Emily remembered another palace, another life, another version of herself disappearing beneath expectations. Nathan seemed to read the fear in her face. You do not owe me a place beside this throne because you chose me beside a clinic. Emily swallowed. What are you saying? I am giving you the choice everyone tried to take from you. He stepped back from the crown. You may return to your family. You may build a life anywhere you want. Or you may walk through those doors with me, and we will discover what comes next without pretending either of us knows. Vanessa stood near the far wall, unusually silent. Adrian watched without interference. Emily looked at the crown, then at Nathan's worn healer's bag resting beside his chair. Two symbols of the same man. One represented everything she had once believed she wanted. The other represented the reason she had chosen differently. Emily reached forward. Her fingers passed the crown and closed around the handle of the healer's bag. Nathan's eyes softened. I already chose once without knowing who you were, she said. Do not make the mistake of thinking a crown gets to choose for me now. For the first time that morning, Nathan smiled. Then Emily placed the healer's bag in his hand and looked toward the open doors. Come on, Nathan. We still have patients waiting. 3 months later, the crown still spent more time on a velvet cushion than on Nathan's head. Emily discovered this on a cold January morning when she entered the restored council chamber and found the Alpha King reviewing clinic reports with his sleeves rolled to his elbows, the silver crown resting untouched beside a stack of medical supply requests. You know most kings wear those, she said. Nathan looked up. I was told it interferes with paperwork. Emily smiled and placed another folder before him. Life had not become simpler after Nathan reclaimed his lawful position. It had become busier. He divided his weeks between the palace and the northern settlements, refusing to abandon the clinic simply because people now bowed when he entered a room. Emily had made her own choice as well. She accepted no ceremonial title beyond what was necessary for official duties. Instead, she helped establish a regional medical council that gave village healers direct access to royal administrators. The first policy Nathan approved required emergency medicine reserves in every northern settlement, regardless of wealth or rank. The second required independent inspection of all medical suppliers. People called them royal reforms. Emily knew they had begun in a 3-room clinic with mismatched chairs. Adrian remained at court, though something quieter had replaced his old certainty. He and Nathan disagreed often, but Nathan never punished disagreement. Vanessa returned to the Carter estate and, after several uncomfortable weeks, sent Emily a letter that contained neither excuses nor accusations. Emily kept it unanswered in a drawer until she was ready. A second life, she had learned, did not require repairing every relationship immediately. It only required refusing to repeat the choices that had destroyed the first. That afternoon, Nathan and Emily returned to the village clinic. Snow covered the porch, and someone had left another jar of peach preserves beside the door. Nathan picked it up with a resigned expression. Royal taxes are becoming unusual. You should be grateful. I am. I simply have enough preserves to survive until spring. Inside, the familiar smell of dried herbs and clean linen welcomed them. Mr. Hayes sat in the waiting room pretending he had not arrived early just to complain about his wrist again. When Nathan entered, the old veteran started to rise. Nathan pointed at the chair. Do not. Hayes sat immediately. Emily laughed. You realize that proves my original suspicion. Nathan removed his coat. Which one? That everyone obeys you. You do not. Exactly. His smile followed her across the room. Hours later, after the final patient left, they stood together on the porch beneath a clear winter sky. Nathan held 2 cups of coffee while Emily watched moonlight settle over the cedar trees. There is something I never answered, he said. What? The first day. I asked whether you were choosing me or running from Adrian. Emily remembered the royal hall, Adrian's waiting hand, and the impossible weight of a life only she remembered. At first, maybe both. Nathan nodded. And now? Emily turned toward him. The man beside her was still the healer who accepted bread instead of payment. He was also Nathaniel Vale, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. Neither truth erased the other. Now I know exactly what I am choosing. Nathan became very still. Emily continued before he could speak. Not the palace. Not the crown. Not the name people bow to. She touched the worn strap of the healer's bag resting beside him. You. Nathan looked down for a moment, and when he met her eyes again, the authority that could silence a council was nowhere in his expression. There was only quiet gratitude. Then I should tell you something too, he said. When you walked past Adrian, I thought you had made a terrible mistake. Emily laughed softly. That is romantic. I am a healer. We prefer accurate diagnoses. And your diagnosis now? Nathan looked toward the small clinic, then toward the distant palace lights barely visible beyond the hills. You were the first person who chose me when. Choosing me appeared to cost you everything. His voice softened. I intend to spend this life making sure that choice never costs you yourself. Emily felt the words settle somewhere deeper than promises had reached in her first life. She had once believed being reborn meant receiving another chance to choose the right future. Standing beside Nathan beneath the winter stars, she finally understood it differently. She had not returned to find a better prince. She had returned to become a woman brave enough to recognize a good man before learning he was a king.